Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. We're talking here today about accountability and how the Democrat Party, how the media does not want accountability when it comes to the way that they have hidden from you, hidden from me, the condition, the health, the overall fitness of Joseph Robinette bribery. And they say, listen, for those of us who are questioning this, they're now saying that we are seeking conspiracy theories. They're trying to derail us. They're trying to say, hey, just be empathetic. Don't talk about this. By talking about this, you're showing that you don't care for the president. By raising questions, you're showing that you're engaging in conspiracy theories, blah, blah, blah. Folks, this matters. This matters. If they've gotten away with it once, they'll think they can get away with it twice. And what is this? This is deceiving you. This is gaslighting you. This is hiding from you the condition, the mental acuity of the person that the American people had leading this country, leading the executive branch. This raises all sorts of questions, by the way. Questions about the auto pen come back up. The more that we see Biden was completely incapable of being commander-in-chief. So, they're doing all they can to avoid ultimate accountability. And that's kind of what we've been talking about today, and that's what I want to continue talking about here and get into other things as well. There's a ton of stuff in the stack of stuff if you want to take a look at it on our website, toddhuffshow.com. Just look for the stack of stuff, my friends. Before we get going, though, MyPillow, my friends, MyPillow is a place where you can get quality products that will help you get a good night's sleep so that you can recharge your batteries to fight the battles of the day. Whatever that might mean, whether that's working your job, whether that's running a business, whether that's working at your church, volunteering, raising your family, homeschooling, teaching in a classroom, whatever the case, MyPillow helps you get that good night's sleep. And I told you why. There's two reasons why I love MyPillow. Number one, I'm a side sleeper. I've got a big head and broad shoulders. That's a perfect recipe for your neck to get out of alignment. The pillow forms nicely to fit under this big head and keep this neck straight and comfortable throughout the night, number one. Number two, it's got the cooling technology. I can't sleep hot. I don't like it. MyPillow has made efforts, I should say, to make sleeping at night less hot for people like me. The pillow has a cooling technology. They've got other products as well. MyPillow slippers, which of course Oz has on today, as she does each and every day. Every once in a while I see that she doesn't have them on, but she's got them on today. They've got sheets, they've got towels, they've got dog beds, you name it. MyPillow.com is where you can go. And if you use my name, Todd, you're going to get savings on, I'm going to say every product, but there could be one or two that there's not a sale on. I don't know. But just about every product there. MyPillow.com, promo code Todd, my friends. Again, MyPillow.com, promo code Todd, gets you those savings. All right. So, accountability. I've talked about tomorrow night, by the way. Tomorrow night, game one of the Indiana Pacers, New York Knicks. Hicks versus the Knicks. I'm looking forward to this. By the way, I did see yesterday on Pat McAfee's show, there was a guy in New York City who was wearing a Pacers jersey, and he was being bullied, or I'm trying to think of the right word here, because it didn't turn violent, although there were lots of people that were going after this guy. They were hitting him with things, but it was like soft items, still, it had to be intimidating. He's a New Yorker. He's been a Pacers fan. He's wearing his Tyrese Halliburton jersey through the streets, and he gets this kind of response. McAfee's team, they hunt this guy down. They put him on the program. Tyrese Halliburton, point guard for the Pacers, offers to get the guy tickets to Game 4. Going to fly him to watch the Pacers and Knicks in Game 4 here in Indianapolis. I bring that up, A, because I love talking about the Pacers, but B, because it leads to the talk or the conversation we had about sports. And you talk about competitiveness. And when you're in a competitive field, well, whatever that might mean, competitive, we're the President of the United States, we're in a competitive environment. What Trump's trying to do right now is negotiate better trade deals to put the United States in an advantageous, a better position. They're competing. He's looking for win-wins. You got to have a solution that works for everybody. But he says no longer will the United States take, we're in a competitive business climate here. I'm not going to put our businesses at a disadvantage. No longer are we going to just pay that cost. It's not going to happen. And when you think about being competitive, when you're in a competitive job or you're hired to do a task, you have to be able to perform. And if you're not performing, you're held accountable. If the Pacers players lose 0-4, there's going to be a time in this series, if they go down and lose to the next 4-0, they're going to review the roster, and they're going to think, is there somebody that we need to trade? Is there someone we need to try to look to draft? Is there someone we need to try to sign or make a move on in the free agency market or trade for to give us a better chance of winning next year? There's this period of holding people accountable for not achieving the objective, which in this case is an NBA championship. But in the case of our President of the United States, it's holding someone accountable who's making decisions that impact the lives of the American people. And that is an important thing. And it is our job, just as it is your supervisor's job at work to hold you accountable, just as, in a way, spouses hold one another accountable, parents hold children accountable. We're all accountable to somebody. There's different people and different things that we're accountable for and to. The same is true for this scenario. We, the voters, have to hold the president accountable. But it's not just the president in this case. It's all the other people who lied to us, who covered up, who played this game, who told us that Biden was completely fine and everything was just good to go. And so accountability is important. Without accountability, we cannot improve. Without accountability, there's no way to alter the direction ultimately that we're on. We've got to, this requires us to step in and demand accountability. We're at the phase now where they're admitting, the media, the Democrat Party, that something was wrong with Biden. Now, they're still not coming clean. They're still not admitting that it was mental. There was a mental problem with this. Now they're trying to say, or at least hint or set up the opportunity to say, well, it was cancer or there were other physical things that were happening to the president. He was shuffling. It was just a physical deterioration, but his mental fitness was still there. And they're gonna plant their, they're gonna try to dig in there. They're going to try to stake this ground out and land there because they don't want to admit that the president, the commander-in-chief, was mentally unfit to serve in office. So, they're coming up with explanations. They're coming up with, anything to admit, or I should say, avoid admitting what was really going on. Headline here, CNN. This is at Red State, is talking about CNN. Biden cognitive decline cover-up. CNN further beclowns itself, finds 2 new scapegoats to blame. This is written by Mike Miller at Red State. My oh my, how things happen quickly when a guy takes a 3-day weekend. Former President Joe Biden was diagnosed on Friday with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. Also on Friday, Axios posted partial audio from an interview special counsel Robert Hur held with Biden way back on October 8th and 9th of 2023. Remember, they were not going to let us hear this audio prior to the election, even though Robert Hur concluded that Biden, this is my talking, not the article here, even though Robert Hur concluded that Biden could not be, a jury would not find Biden guilty of anything because he was in no cognitive condition for a jury to find him basically responsible mentally for whatever actions he had taken. Anyway, going back to the article here, which clearly shows these interviews, the audio from the Hur interview, clearly shows the then president struggling to recall dates and details, including what year his son, Beau Biden, died, and mumbling while desperately trying to recall events from just a few years earlier. That's one of the reasons why I don't play this audio, is that it's kind of hard to make out because there is mumbling. It's not, it may be good enough. In fact, I was listening to it again this morning and I thought I might be able to play that, but it's on the cusp of, I just don't want to do that. I think it's probably better to just talk about it. If you want to see it though, and you haven't seen it, it is on the stack of stuff today at toddhuffshow.com. Yet, he writes, even in the aftermath of the breaking news events, the left-wing media has continued to spin itself into the ground over its abject failure, blatant refusal, to pursue the question of Biden's obvious mental and physical decline while president, both by absurdly blaming everyone but themselves, that's exactly what they're doing, while also selectively throwing one another under the bus. The above shirking of responsibility, again, lack of accountability here when they don't take responsibility, for its direct involvement in the cover-up has been no more evident than on CNN, the laughably self-proclaimed most trusted name in news. While host Jake Tapper, who I think, by the way, is maybe the worst offender here, he's up there. He's up there. The hypocritical hood ornament of the CNN Biden cover-up clown car has faced blistering attacks for a publication of a book investigating Biden's decline long after the public finally learned the truth during his disastrous presidential debate with then former President Trump on June 27th, 2024. CNN senior justice correspondent Evan Perez kicked up the struggling network's irrational rationalization several notches on Friday's episode of The Lead in a desperate attempt to explain Biden's debate performance. This is what he says. Look, one of the things that I think is key to understanding this during this interview, the context, right, is that you remember he sat down for these interviews when right after the attack, I'm reading a quote here, this guy's all over the place, when right after the attack by Hamas in Israel. And so he had spent that entire time obviously on the phone and working long hours. So now because of the October 7th attack by Hamas in Israel, because of that, Biden was on the phone, taking phone calls, working long hours. That corresponded with the timing of this interview. And so that's what this particular make-believe journalist wants us to believe. Perez continued, and so the big question, of course, became a president of his age, and given the stresses of what he was going through, should he have sat down? Should that have been the time for him to sit down for several hours of interviews? And they do go over 2 days of interviews with prosecutors, with everything that they had on the line. Clearly, Joe Biden thought it was fine to do that. So again, it's the fact that all this was happening with Hamas and Israel, that's what made the president tired. I mean, listen, folks, the depths to which these people will go. It is, again, it's deceive, gaslight, misrepresent, try to throw you off the path, try to criticize you if you raise questions. If you continue to ask questions, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. If that doesn't work and the heat has gotten turned up so much that it's undeniable that there's something wrong with the president, you get the release of these audio clips of him not making sense with Robert Hur, then you have to at least acknowledge it, but now you got to find something to blame. And the guy was tired. He was tired because he was working to try to prevent an all-out war in the Middle East, because this was the Hamas October 7th attack timeline. I mean, they just continually go to this. It's whatever they can do to keep from admitting the truth. It's whatever they can do to avoid being held accountable. They don't want to completely diminish the power they have over some people. And so part of this is if they take blame, they're going to be losing credibility. But they should lose credibility. Actually, some of these journalists have zero credibility, if you ask me. Jake Tapper may be in the front of that line. But this is how they behave. This is how they go about doing this. We have to dismantle this system that is able to at least pull this shenanigan, to pull the wool over the eyes of certain people. We have to dismantle their ability to do this. And we do this by shining the light of day on the issue. We do this by talking about what it is that is actually true. Something that the left certainly does not want to do. So, more to say about this, my friends. Before I do that, though, let me remind you that every dollar we spend, you know this, is a vote. It's a vote for the kind of America that we want to live in. If we're voting with our dollars and giving our dollars to woke corporations, we're going to find an America that's becoming progressively more woke. That's why we launched Freedom Marketplace. It is a directory of conservative businesses that align with your values and beliefs. It's free for you to use. These businesses have made a promise: no support for leftist candidates, no support for leftist causes, and if they violate that promise, my friends, they're off of the directory. So, if you're tired of funding the woke agenda by doing business with businesses that support that crap, check out Freedom Marketplace, freedommarketplace.net. It's free, it's easy, my friends. And you can support businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are. Liberty and business for all at freedommarketplace.net. All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit here.
Respond to President Biden?
Sorry, the sound bite jumped in a little bit sooner than I expected. Yesterday, at the White House, Trump does a press conference. He's asked about Biden, right? He's asked about Biden's condition, the announcement. This is Caitlin Collins of CNN, another very terrible journalist in my estimation, asking him this question. I want you to listen to Trump's response. It's rather lengthy, as many things that Trump says are. But this is Trump's response. Well, you'll hear the question and then the response of Trump about Biden's diagnosis with cancer.
Do you want to respond to President Biden being diagnosed with cancer? Are you going to call your predecessor?
I think it's very sad, actually. I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time. I just had my physical. You saw that. You saw the results of that particular test. I think that test is standard to pretty much anybody getting a physical, good physical. We had the doctors at the White House and over at Walter Reed, which is a fantastic hospital. I did a very complete physical, including cognitive tests. I'm proud to announce I aced it. I got them all right. You proud of me? Yes. Your husband would be proud of me for getting them all right. It's a little risk. If I didn't get them all right, these people would be after me. It would be not a good situation. But I think, frankly, anybody running for president should take a cognitive test. They say it's unconstitutional, but I would say in that particular case, having a cognitive test wouldn't be so bad. But when you take tests, medical, as a male, that test is very standard. I don't know if it's given to everybody, but it's given just about. And it takes a long time to get to that situation. Now, I think, to get to a stage 9, I think that if you take a look, it's the same doctor that said that Joe was cognitively fine. There was nothing wrong with him. Well, he said, if it's the same doctor, he said there was nothing wrong there, and that's being proven to be a sad situation. And
So he's pointing out here that a lot of things. Number one, we were told that he was in great health, President Biden. Now we're being told he's had cancer for probably or potentially 10 years or so. Why didn't we know that? Why weren't they telling us this? But it's not just the cancer. Again, this is how they do this. They conflate things to throw people off the scent of the trail of their deception. They throw people into disarray. But it doesn't work for those of us that follow this. So they'll say that the cancer diagnosis among people on the left will become the main talking point here, because it allows them to avoid the issues regarding his cognition. That's why Trump's bringing up the cognition. I took this physical. The physical has a lot of things. The physical's got a cognitive test. I aced the cognitive test, by the way. Best cognitive test results in the history of humanity. I aced it. Nobody in this room wants to talk about it because I aced it. But if I missed a question, they would have wanted to talk about it incessantly. But I had a great cognitive test. Biden's cognitive test, I don't know. What else are they hiding from us, right? This is how he's going about this. And he's right. Again, not to have a lack of empathy or anything. This is a major problem in our country. The media acknowledging that the previous president had cancer, they had no idea, or at least they didn't tell us. And not just that, he had more troubling from the American voter perspective is the fact that he had a complete lack of cognition. So now Trump says he brings up the auto pen because things were still happening when we had this president in office previously who didn't know what was going on. And he's going to talk about the auto pen here, which is another big part of this.
And the auto pen is becoming a very big deal. The auto pen is becoming a big deal because it seems like that maybe was the president who ever operated the auto pen. But when they say that was not good, they also, you have to look and you have to say that the test was not so good either. In other words, there are things going on that the public wasn't informed. And I think somebody's going to have to speak to his doctor, if it's the same, or even if it's two separate doctors. Why wasn't the cognitive ability, why wasn't that discussed? And I think the doctor said he's just fine, and it's turned out that's not so. It's very dangerous. Look, this is no longer politically correct. This is dangerous for our country. Look at the mess we're in. You're talking about all these questions on Ukraine and Russia that would have never happened. As an example, if I were president, it would have never happened. The other thing is you have to say, why did it take so long? I mean, this takes a long time. It can take years to get to this level of danger.
Yeah, so I have to take a break here, but he says, why don't we have this other we still don't have the information. What else are they lying to us about? There's clearly a cognitive ability. Why did they hide this from us for so long? What is going on here? This is a dangerous situation. It is dangerous indeed. I've got to take a break though, my friend. Sit tight. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Just want to play the very end of this clip from Trump here, talking about the situation with President Biden, the announcement of cancer, all this stuff. But he's, again, hitting at on the correct things here. There are questions that we should ask, and they're important questions to get answers for. They're important questions that we need to get answers to, I should say. Here's what how he concludes his statement, his answer to the question regarding calling the president, the former president, if he has any remarks or comments about the diagnosis and so forth. This is how he concludes that.
It's a very, very sad situation, and I feel very badly about it. And I think people should try and find out what happened, because I'll tell you, I don't know if it had anything to do with the hospital. Walter Reed is really good. They're some of the best doctors I've ever seen. I don't even know if they were involved, but a doctor was involved in each case. Maybe it was the same doctor. And somebody is not telling the facts. That's a big problem.
It is a big problem. It is a big problem when they're hiding the truth from the American people, especially about a public official, the highest public official in the land. They've just decided they're not going to talk about that. J.D. Vance was asked about this too, as he was flying around the country. He was asked about Biden's cancer diagnosis. This is what he said.
Oh, no, you don't. Speaking of Joe Biden, sir, do you have any thoughts on his diagnosis?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, of course, we wish the best for the former president's health. And, it sounds pretty serious, but hopefully he makes the right recovery. Look, I will say, whether the right time to have this conversation is now or at some point in the future, we really do need to be honest about whether the former president was capable of doing the job. And that's no, that you can separate the desire for him to have the right health outcome with the recognition that whether it was doctors or whether there were staffers around the former president, I don't think he was able to do a good job for the American people. And that's not politics. That's not because I disagreed with him on policy. That's because I don't think that he was in good enough health. In some ways, I blame him less than I blame the people around him. And why didn't the American people have a better sense of his health picture? Why didn't the American people have more accurate information about what he was actually dealing with? This is serious stuff. And this is the guy who carries around the nuclear football for the world's largest nuclear arsenal. This is not child's play, and we can pray for good health, but also recognize that if you're not in good enough health to do the job, you shouldn't be doing the job. Okay, thank you guys.
And that's right. You can pray for the president's health while at the same time acknowledge that if he's not in good health, he shouldn't be doing the job. The media knew this. The Democrat Party knew this. That's why they kept it away from us. Accountability. They want to avoid accountability at all costs. At all costs. It is remarkable what they've done to us, the amount of deception. And they're not going to come clean, my friends. They're not going to come clean unless we force them to. Unless we force them to. These things, you can be empathetic and prayerful about the former president, his condition, and all of that, while at the same time demanding answers to these questions. It's not just this issue, though. It's not just this particular issue, which is a huge one that people are trying to avoid accountability on. We've also got our friend out there, former FBI Director James Comey. He sat down with Nicole Wallace on MSNBC. Now, you'll remember, we talked about this on the program. James Comey had recently gotten himself in trouble for posting a picture on social media where there were shells on the beach arranged into 4 digits. Someone had taken shells and arranged them into a shape that represented the numbers 8, 6, 4, 7. And we went through this. We talked about this on this program. This has become a code. This has become a code to say, to get rid of the president of the United States. 86 referencing to eliminate or get rid of something. And 47, of course, referencing the 47th president of the United States, which would be Donald J. Trump. By the way, he was also the 45th president of the United States. And there's video and photographic evidence that Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan had those digits displayed behind her during television interviews. It would have been 8645 at the time. 8645 at the time were behind her. Now, the question is, do you buy into the fact that this is just, we just want the guy out of office? Or is this something more sinister? Remember, the president of the United States has had 2 attempts on his life. One of those attempts struck his ear. One of those attempts was mere millimeters away from, in all likelihood, killing the president of the United States. That was one of those instances. And there was another attempt on his life as well. So you've got the former FBI director, James Comey, posting to social media a code. Now, again, he's the former FBI director. This guy should be aware of the meaning of codes like this. I mean, this is hard for me to accept what he's about to tell Nicole Wallace here, which I'll play for you. His explanation. Notice a couple things. He tries to act like he's just some, this innocent old grandpa strolling down the beach, trying to explain away why he found this shell formation so fascinating to begin with. I mean, how many times have you walked down the beach and seen something there that you just walked by without a second thought? Maybe you looked at it. Maybe it says Tommy loves Susie. Do you sit there and say, wow, that is incredible. They made it with seashells. Let's put that up on the Instagram. Let's get that on the gram so people can see. I mean, to me, it's just the whole thing. The whole thing is just bizarre. But he kind of outs himself a little bit because he suggests here in his answer, and by the way, he suggested this in his response, his follow-up post, because he deleted the initial post after he was called out for basically inciting people to assassinate Trump. He got rid of that post. He deleted that post, and he put up another post where he said, I assumed it was some sort of political message. So he knew it was some sort of political message, but he didn't take the time to really consider what the message was, especially, again, this is the former FBI director. It's at least interesting that the former FBI director didn't know this. To me, anyway. So, that being said, let's play his response. This is his explanation. He's trying to come out now and get ahead of this because he's had to talk with Secret Service, I should say. He's had interviews. He's been accused, or there's questions concerning what is his intent with this message. What does he know? What's he trying to say? So he's getting out here in the media trying to say, look, this was innocent. I'm just this old innocent grandpa who doesn't know much, and he kind of laughs at his post and so forth. I just want you to listen to this. Again, anything to avoid actual accountability.
To the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book, and to think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it. And we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know. And we stood over it, and I said, I think it's some kind of like political message. And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. I said, that's really clever. So then she said, you should take a picture of that. And I did. And I posted it on my Instagram account and thought nothing more of it until I heard through her that people were saying it was some sort of a call for assassination, which is crazy. But I took it down. Even if I think it's crazy, I don't want to be associated with violence of any kind.
And then what happened?
I got a call from the Secret Service that night asking if I would speak to them about it. Of course. I admire the Secret Service. They're pros. I spoke to them on the phone. Then they asked the next day when I got home, would I be willing to come in and meet them in person at the Washington field office, which again, I did, and they were pros again.
They were pros. You buy this? First of all, he's out walking the beach. He sees these shells, and he's just mesmerized. Oh, why would someone, his wife supposedly says, why would someone put an address on the beach? Oh, I don't think it's an address, honey. I think it's a political message. Oh, well, take a picture of it. Take a picture of it. It's clever. When I was a server, because I'm just part of the working class, my wife was a server, Patrice, that meant, we ran out of something. Let's run out of that's clever. Run out of President Trump. Let's post that. I mean, this was a conversation topic. I just can't believe this. This is incredibly stupid to me. And he's the former FBI director. This guy should know better. This guy 100% should know better. Do you believe him? Do you think that this is a way to avoid accountability? Do you think some people wonder if he's trying to goad the Secret Service into this investigation to make it look like Trump? I don't know. Think whatever you want, but this is stupid at best and intentional at worst. Got to take a break though, my friend. Sit tight. Back in just a minute. Been talking about accountability today, my friends. The left is doing its level best to avoid any and all accountability for their actions, for their behavior, for the silly things that they expose us to each and every day. They've wreaked havoc on this country when they're in control. When they're not in control, they perform certain, they engage in behavior that sometimes is outright illegal, as we're finding out here. And that's what I want to talk about here, this final segment of the program today. Headline here at Fox News, federal charges filed against Democratic Congresswoman following confrontation at ICE facility. Newark mayor and congressional lawmakers claim they were targeted after attempting to enter Delaney Hall during the protest. Now, here's what it says. Ras Baraka, who's the mayor of Newark, he was not charged. So these Democrats go to protest a ICE detention facility. You may have seen this. They've done this with other things as well, right? They've done this outside of Department of Education buildings. They try to gain access. When people won't let them in, they say that this is, oh my goodness, you're blocking us. You're not, Trump is acting like a dictator. They're not allowing us to use our oversight. When in reality, some of these things, if it's a publicly accessible place, they have the right to be there. But if these are places where you can't go without an appointment, this is political theater is what it is. And so they want the confrontation. They want it to look like Trump is acting, Trump's team is acting, Trump's ICE is acting like totalitarian Gestapo. That's what they want you to believe. So let's read this article, or a piece of this anyway. Acting U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey, Alina Habba, is charging Representative LaMonica McIver for alleged misconduct towards law enforcement in front of Delaney Hall in New Jersey earlier this month, but she is dismissing the trespassing charge against Newark Mayor Ras Baraka. Now, Mayor Baraka doesn't have any charges, but they are pursuing charges on Representative McIver. And this is why. This is what Habba said. Representative LaMonica McIver assaulted, impeded, and interfered with law enforcement in violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 111A1, Habba said in a letter shared on X Monday. That conduct cannot be overlooked by the chief federal law enforcement official in the state of New Jersey, and it is my constitutional obligation to ensure that our federal law enforcement is protected when executing their duties. McIver responded to the charges in a statement shared on social media. Earlier this month, this is her response, Representative McIver, who of course is a Democrat. Earlier this month, I joined my colleagues to inspect the treatment of ICE detainees at Delaney Hall in my district. We were fulfilling our lawful oversight responsibilities as members of Congress have done many times before, and our visit should have been peaceful and short. Instead, ICE agents created an unnecessary and unsafe confrontation when they chose to arrest Mayor Baraka. The charges against me are purely political. They mischaracterize and distort my actions and are meant to criminalize and deter legislative oversight. This administration will never stop me from working for the people in our district and standing up for what is right. I am thankful for the outpouring of support I have received, and I look forward to the truth being laid out clearly in court. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem weighed in on the charges against McIver, saying no one is above the law. If any person, regardless of political party, influence, or status, assaults a law enforcement officer, as we witnessed Congresswoman McIver do, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, the secretary wrote. We thank our brave ICE law enforcement officers for their service to this great nation. Now, there's more, of course, to this, but the bottom line is that she's been charged with assault, and that, of course, cannot happen. They overlooked the trespass charge for the mayor, and this, in my estimation, is the Trump team, or the administration doing their level best to make sure that they're not over politicizing these things. They're trying to be reasonable here, but you cannot assault. I can't believe I'm saying this. You can't assault. I can't believe people have to hear people say this. Law enforcement officers. And if you're doing that, you should be held accountable to what the law is. And that's what the charges are here. That's what the charges are. She says, McIver, what they want you to believe, the left's narrative, is that this is, again, Trump going after his political opponents. He doesn't want any oversight. He wants to make sure that he does what he wants to do and is not held accountable. But in reality, certainly at the surface level here, it appears that the people who don't want accountability are the people who are breaking the law, in this case, allegedly assaulting an officer, and then wanting to be let off the hook because of their political position. I don't know if this is what she hoped for. I know that she wanted the confrontation. I'm very confident in that. But the question is, did she think it would go this far? Did she think that the administration wouldn't see to it that she be held accountable legally for these actions? Does she think that she would be let off the hook here? I don't know. We'll see where this ends up. But this is becoming a recurring problem. People trying to interfere with federal law enforcement, their ability to do their job, especially as it pertains to deportation and taking people into their custody who don't belong in this country. But I'm out of time. Gotta go. SDG.